Hello and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Brian Baca and I'm the Product Support Manager for InfoSol, and today we'll be discussing features of the upcoming InfoBurst build 123. The first set of enhancements regards document processing. Document processing is generally the process of taking a BI report and bursting it, publishing it, and then delivering it. And the first enhancement in this area regards BI4. Specifically, in 123, we've added support for BI 4.0 SP7 and BI 4.1 SP1. The next enhancement regards the Deskl Compatibility Pack, or DCP. For those that aren't familiar with DCP, the DCP was introduced in BI 4.1 SP1, and it gives Deskl users the ability to store Deskl reports on the BI 4.1 platform and run their Deskl reports from their XI3 Deskl client. The idea with the DCP is to give Deskl users the ability to run their existing Deskl in BI4 while converting those reports over to Webby, where SAP have indicated that Deskl support will officially end sometime in 2015. So you can run your Deskl reports in BI4. There are no enhancements to Deskl in BI4 with the DCP, nor are you able to create new reports using the DCP, just utilizing existing reports from XI3. What the DCP does not provide is the ability to schedule those Deskl reports using the BI4 scheduler, and that's where InfoBurst comes in. With the DCP in Build 123, we can schedule, burst, and deliver those XI3 Deskl reports against 4.1 using all the standard features of InfoBurst. As a Business Objects user, you will need to be on BI 4.1 SP1 or later to take advantage of the DCP. And the 123 release notes, which will be available when the build is available for download, will instruct you on how to deploy the DCP for use with InfoBurst. So let's take a look at an example of working with a Deskl report from BI4. We'll just log into InfoBurst. What we've done behind the scenes is create a platform connection to a BI 4.1 environment, and then from that environment we'll add a Deskl report. We'll select our platform. So with the DCP we can store Deskl in BI4, so I have a Deskl folder here and I select a report, and then we'll add that report to InfoBurst. From there we can take the report and add it to a burst just as we would any other BI document. You'll note here the Deskl report icon in InfoBurst has that DCP label, so it can be differentiated from Deskl documents from other platforms in InfoBurst. We'll just add that to a burst. This report has a prompt for state. We'll drive that with a data source here. We have a multi-column list that has a list of states. And then we'll add a delivery. This is a delivery template where we'll send the Deskl report content in PDF format to a network share. We'll just call this DCP burst. We'll add that, make a small change here, and execute. As I said, documentation on deploying the DCP for use with InfoBurst will be available in the 123 documentation. Use of the DCP means that InfoBurst is no longer utilizing the BI4 platform to process the report. It's not supported there. So InfoBurst is utilizing the XI3 client tools, which includes the Deskl client, installed on the InfoBurst server to process the report. So we never, except for logging into the platform, InfoBurst never touches the platform to process Deskl. The report is refreshed, filtered, published, all using the Deskl client, and then InfoBurst will take the results and deliver that. Okay, so that burst is done, and again, very standard output here. And if we open this up, we have our Deskl report processed from a BI4 platform and delivered using InfoBurst. So that's the DCP and BI 4.1. The next enhancement is support for client Deskl reports. A client Deskl report is a Deskl document, a .rep file that is not stored on the Business Objects platform. Instead, it's typically stored on a network share, a network folder somewhere. 123 gives you the ability to catalog and process these documents just as you would a document from the Business Objects platform. It does require XI3 or later, and it also requires that the desktop intelligence or the BO client tools be installed on the InfoBurst server. And again, instruction for creating a client platform and working with these client Deskl documents. Information will be available in the 123 release notes. The next change gives users the ability to leverage a cache query as a data source in certain areas of the platform. So we can use a cache query, and I'll explain what that is in a moment, as a data source to drive burst parameters, to drive a document source in a burst, or to filter, or even to pull email addresses for purposes of delivery. So for those that aren't aware of what XDC is a part of InfoBurst that allows users to create data caches from various sources. It could be Excel files, web intelligence reports, direct database queries. The idea is to create a cache from these sources. InfoBurst would go out and get data from these sources on some sort of schedule and cache it. And then that cache is used to supply data to a dashboard, an Excelsius or a Dashboards for dashboard. And this is done in one of two ways. We can supply all cache data to a dashboard, or users can leverage what's called a cache query that says instead of taking the entire cache or table of data, let's write a SQL query against that cache that gives us only the information that we need. So for example, I might write a cache to give me just a list of states from a larger cache of data, or excuse me, a cache query. So utilizing that cache and cache query, we can now drive bursting with this data source. Before I show it to you, let me give you a quick example, kind of the use case that drove this enhancement. We have a fairly high volume user of InfoBurst, and they're bursting thousands of reports a day. At any given time, they have upwards of 20 parallel processes running in InfoBurst, churning out loads and loads of webby content. And the control tables for these bursts, the list of values, the email addresses, are all derived from Oracle. So every time the burst runs, InfoBurst is querying Oracle for LOVs, for email addresses. And the problem that this particular site has was the instability of Oracle. At times, Oracle was unavailable, and this would cause bursts in InfoBurst to fail. Now, the data from Oracle was not real time. That data was only updated once a day. So, InfoBurst was hitting Oracle continuously for historical data. So the idea with the cache query as a data source was, let's utilize this existing dashboard functionality in InfoBurst to build a cache of data from Oracle for this particular user, cache all of the data in their control table every morning. And then instead of hitting Oracle all day, they'll hit that pre-built cache with cache queries to pull out all the data they need for the particular bursting and delivery scenario. So that's the general use case here. So the cache query is just another data source in InfoBurst, and we'll look at an example of that. So as I said, the cache in InfoBurst can come from the database, Excel, Web Intelligence, and in this example we have a database connection. We'll look at this query here, the city's emails. We're querying in this, I believe this is SQL Server, and we're just selecting all the data from a particular table. Using that query, we'll build what's called an XDC. It stands for XML Data Cache, or the cache. So we'll just pull that down. We'll select our city's email query, and we'll build a new XDC. I'll just call it XDC. And with any cache, before we can use it, we must refresh it to build that initial cache. So we'll do that now, and we'll just let that run. So think of the cache as a database table. It actually is a database table housed internally in InfoBurst. And against that cache, which can be very large, we've got some customers that have caches in excess of 2 million rows, we can write standard SQL to pull out data for different purposes. So that's done. And let's see, we'll go back into the XDC here. So the cache is available, and in this, this XDC we can then go about writing a cache query. Instructions on how to create XDCs and cache queries, again, all available in the InfoBurst support wiki. So here we'll just go with a select all from the cache. We can add it here. We can test it here. So here's our entire cache. And now we'll utilize that as a data source in a burst. So when we run the burst, instead of hitting SQL Server, we'll instead be hitting the cache data. So we'll pull down a Webby report here. We'll build a new burst. Just call this XDC data source. We'll use the XDC as a the cache query as a data source in two different parts of the burst. First off, we'll be filtering this report by city. And we will drive the list of values for the filter using the cache query. So you'll notice here a new data source type is the XDC. We'll select it, and then from any given XDC you'll see a list of all the cache queries available in that XDC. We would simply select it. So here we have our city's email query, and we'll apply that as the source for the filter values. We'll also utilize the cache query in the delivery. So for this report we'll burst this or deliver to email, where we are leveraging another column in the cache, the email column, to drive the email delivery. And for that, we'll utilize what we call our extra column macro, which simply says, give InfoBurst a email address for a particular filter value, a city value. So we just enter the macro and apply it. So we're pulling both the filter values for the report bursting and the email addresses for the delivery, both from that cache query. And we'll just select a format and we'll run that. Again, the output is quite standard, just a bursted report to email recipients, but what's unique here is use of the XDC, the cache query, as the data source. The next change regards the document instance name. In build 122, we introduced the ability to uniquely name document instances in a burst. This is typically done where the burst contains multiple instances of the same report, where we would want to uniquely name that instance to identify what it does in the burst. What wasn't provided in 122 was the ability to discern that particular document instance in the activity log. So let's say, for example, the report was named performance by state. If I had 5 instances of that in the burst, we would just see multiple references to that one report name in the activity log, which could make troubleshooting an issue. So the change we've introduced in 123 was reference in the activity log to the document instance name rather than the original document name. Okay, these next changes involve the user interface. The first one is burst now. So whenever you run a burst manually, not on a schedule, you typically use the burst now button. And before 123, when you pressed burst now, the burst would kick off and the burst UI would close. But typically, if we're running burst manually, it's in some sort of test mode where we do want to potentially watch the burst run in real time through that activity log. So now in 123, the default behavior for the burst now button is to run the burst and then open the activity log. It's also possible to run the burst without opening the activity log. So if we go back in here to our DCP burst if you click Burst Now, if you click the arrow, if you don't want to see the activity log when you kick off the burst manually, just select Burst Now and close. Otherwise, Burst Now will give you the activity log. These changes are all in the Help About panel. Let me just show you where that is in the user interface. So up here in the top right, we have our Help button. That opens up this Help About panel. And under the Utilities panel here, we have a variety of links to different resources, system monitors, system charts, that sort of thing. So in this user interface, we've added a few new links. First, a link to the InfoBurst Setup UI, a link to the InfoBurst Support Wiki, and finally, a button that produces what's called a Schedules report. So let's talk about that Schedules report. In 123, we've introduced the ability to generate an Excel report for either an individual schedule or all schedules in the system, where the report details the schedule and all sub-objects and their configurations within the schedule. So in the screenshot we see here, for example, we have a schedules report for a single schedule. So we have the schedule detail here, its name, its frequency, all of the schedule level settings, and then on down to any sub-objects, bursts or XDCs within the schedule, and then information about those objects, names of bursts, formats, destinations, all of the detail that we'd want to see in this type of report. So let's move into InfoBurst. As I said, we can generate this report at two levels. First, we can generate it at the individual schedule level. So if we go here to My Home, I have a daily schedule here, and if we open this, we have a new report button. If we select that button, we'll be prompted to download an Excel file containing information about that schedule and all of its sub-objects. Or we can produce the schedules report at a system level. So again, under the Help About and Utilities, if we select the Schedules report, we'll be prompted to download the schedule report. And if we open that here, this is just a sample of what that might look like. So this is a system level schedules report that contains information on multiple schedules. Okay, this last change is to the InfoBurst dashboard connectors for dashboards 4.1. And in that version of the connectors, we've introduced support for BI Mobile. BI Mobile allows the Dashboards 4 user to convert their Flash-based dashboard to an HTML5 application that is then hosted on the BI4 platform and consumed either through a desktop browser or on a mobile device through the BI Mobile app. So in 123, the new version of the Dashboards 4 connectors support this conversion. This conversion, or this mobile compatibility, is available for all connectors but the Save as Excel connector. We're working through an issue with the Dashboards API with SAP, and we're hoping once that gets resolved, we can also provide support for the Save as Excel connector. Let's take a look at that in the Dashboards Designer. All that's really involved here for any Dashboards 4 users that are looking to take advantage of the BI mobile support is updating your existing connector versions to the latest version introduced in build 123. Once the connectors are updated, you then go about publishing the dashboard to the BI4 platform for BI Mobile. So if we preview this in Flash mode, just get an idea of what this dashboard looks like. This dashboard is using a number of InfoBurst cache connectors. Let's try that again. There we go. So all of the information you see on the screen is being pulled directly from a cache or an XDC in InfoBurst. We have a variety of cache query connectors at play in this dashboard. And if we look at the data manager, we can see a listing of all the InfoBurst connectors available here under add-on connections, and the asterisk denotes BI mobile compatibility. You can see all but the Save as Excel connector supported. So once we're using compatible connectors, it's simply a matter of exporting the dashboard to the platform in mobile compatibility mode. And here we can actually preview the dashboard in mobile mode. So preview it as an HTML5 application as it would look on the mobile device. And this conversion process takes just a moment in Dashboards 4. So this is what the dashboard would look like on, let's say, the iPad. Okay, that's BI mobile support for the Dashboards 4 connectors in 123. So finally, just a few slides, information about 123 and some other topics. The general release of build 123 we anticipate will occur in the next few days. When the build is released, you will receive an email notification with all the information you need about where to download the build and how to access the build 123 release notes. Just a few points here about where the build will be available at our support site, release notes available there at the InfoBurst support wiki. And as always, when applying updates, don't forget to back up. Backup instructions are available in the wiki as well. Just a few reminders, InfoBurst user community. InfoBurst does have a user group on LinkedIn. If you're a LinkedIn user and aren't already a member of this group, simply log into LinkedIn, search for InfoBurst. There's only the one group, and it is a closed group, so simply request to join. And I'd say today we have roughly 100, 120 members of the group, a fairly active group. It's a great place to interact with the InfoBurst team, the InfoBurst developers, and interact and collaborate with other InfoBurst users. We're also publishing information about InfoBurst, tips and tricks, upcoming builds, news, that sort of thing on our Twitter feed. So if you're a Twitter user, do subscribe to our feed there. As always, we promote use of the InfoBurst forums available at the InfoSol support site. Great place to go and look for answers to questions, troubleshooting tips, or to collaborate with other users. And as always, if you can't find the information you need in the forum, feel free to log a support call and we can help you out that way. And then finally, just another reminder about the upcoming second annual InfoBurst User Conference. In 2014, the conference will be hosted in Carlsbad, California, June 16th through the 18th. And it will be hosted at the Park Hyatt Aviara Resort, beautiful cliffside resort there in Carlsbad, California. For those of you that attended last year, it was a really great conference, a lot of great discussion groups, panels, user influence, and we expect more of that in 2014. So with that, I thank you all for your time and attending today's webinar. As I said, when Build 123 is available, you will be informed via email with the relevant details. So with that, thank you and have a nice day.